This call is
Okay.
being recorded.
Welcome to Your Daily Writing Habit. If you are writing a book or thinking about it, or maybe you've started writing a book but you need some help getting it done, you are in the right place. Good morning, everyone. I'm your host, Christine Whitmarsh. If you're looking for me online, look for Christine Inc., I-N-K, like that stuff we write with. Each day, I'm sharing with you the writing habits I've learned over my 21 years as a ghostwriter, book coach, and author. I have found that three things in particular have a huge impact on your success as an author, and they can even turn someone who barely sees themselves as a writer into a published book author. Those three things, my pillars here on the show, are writing fundamentals, productivity, and mindset habits. And once again, good morning, everyone. I'm here today on the show to talk about how she translated her experience as an entrepreneur in the personal development and health coaching space into writing her first book, which is a novel based on real-life events, is Marie Cruz. And here's some more about Marie. Marie lives with her husband in a small town outside of New Orleans, where she grew up. They are currently building their dream beach home on the panhandle of Florida, where they will eventually live full-time. Marie has worked from home for the last 10 years, running a successful health coaching business. 4 years ago, she began hosting and facilitating personal development retreats geared toward helping attendees discover the thoughts and beliefs that hold them back from realizing their full potential. After running several retreats, she discovered a need for a more consistent practice of healing. She then created and developed the Novelists Way, Write Your Way to Your Best Life. It's a daily writing program. It is through Marie's unique journey and writing process that she has been able to create the life of her dreams, and she's truly passionate about assisting others to do the same. She is excited to expand her online writing program and host many more retreats at their new beach house. Marie will soon be releasing her first book, a novel entitled Even When She Rose. Although her novel is heavily inspired by the author's experiences, it is a work of fiction. All names and locations have been changed except for her two puppy dogs. However, to the best of her ability, she preserved the spirit and authenticity of the characters who do represent real people. Marie describes her novel as a labor of healing for herself and hope for the world, and she is honored to share it with those who need its message. Her next writing project is already in the works. Welcome, Marie.
Well, thank you, Christine. I'm so excited to be here. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, long time in coming. Marie and I have been working together for a few years now.
4.
4 years. That's a few. I mean, do we know, aren't we in the age of like life human race where it's just like, I don't know what year it is. I don't know what day it is half the time. But yeah, many years.
I think it's probably like 4.5 actually. So, but
something like that.
That's because I've been on awesome. This end of it.
That is a labor of love. And well, let's start with talking about your career prior to becoming a novelist, which you are now. And given the theme of the show, habits, what are some of the habits that got you where you are as the owner of a successful health coaching and personal development business?
Wow. This is interesting because, you know, I was like, I don't know if you call them habits, but then I looked at like, what do I do? What brought this about? And I got to say, probably the most impactful habit or the thing that's got me here the most is daily journaling. I've been journaling for years and years, and one of my coaches at some point helped me understand that my journaling became my meditation. So I would say something called, I call them the morning pages. I journal in the morning every day. And what I do in that is clear the stuff, you know, that's kind of in my way, like negative energy, you know, problems, issues. And then I set my intentions for the day. Like today I want to do this and want to do that. And then I go on and practice my truth, like, you know, where I'm at, how I got there, that kind of thing. And then something else that I really, really have learned to do is to listen and practice the law of attraction. So those are the habits that I would say I do most often that have gotten me as far as I've gotten in my health coaching business and now my personal development business. Is that what you're looking for?
Yeah, absolutely. No, you're great. And I'm just such a fan of journaling. I talk about it, my regular listeners know I talk about it on the show because like you said, yeah, I'll paraphrase what you said. It gets the gunk out. So you're able to get on with your day. And I think sometimes we don't realize how much stuff we're carrying around, whether it be, limiting beliefs or anxieties or concerns. And, just for authors, that gets in the way of our writing without even realizing it until after it happens, or maybe we get blocked or stuck, or we don't feel as productive in our writing caves. And I think journaling can just go so far in solving those problems, just to kind of give us a reset every day to just make sure that we're kind of like writing from our best self every day.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I would say that is for sure the thing that I've practiced for years, and that has made the most impact on, I believe, on where I'm at today.
Yeah, excellent. And the most recent addition to your business is your Novelist Way writing program. So tell us about what that is and how you named it. I love that name, Novelist Way. That's really cool. And what inspired you to create that?
Okay, so as I was thinking about these things, that this journaling is going to be a theme, I believe. So because I was a journaler myself, what I did well, let me start with the name first. So, well, nope, I'm going to go back. So by way of journaling, what I did was I created, through my journaling, I used like these therapy tools and things, and I used them in the journaling, and I just kind of created my own process, I would say, of healing, but in my home, right? So I'm writing every day, but I'm using all the things in my journaling process to heal all of my own issues. Let's call them issues. Those beliefs that were holding me back, right?
Yeah.
So over 30 plus years of different modules or modalities of healing, I would use the work that I learned in the journaling. So I did that for a long, long time. And so I'll tell you just kind of how the writing program came up, and then I'll tell you about the name. So what happened is my writing process evolved. So I started just journaling, daily, just getting stuff out. And then I started on my own, without even really realizing it, incorporating these other things into my writing. And then as I started to run these retreats, and I would teach writing, but it was really hard to teach it because it happened over years. Like it had been created in my own journals over years. So a few years ago, I did a very small retreat with just a few coaches, and I didn't have an agenda. And I said, hey, let's do some writing. But so on the spot, I just said, okay, we're going to start here. We're going to go here. We're going to go here. And this process, what I say, it just kind of came out of nowhere. So it was crazy how it happened. But in order to teach something, I had to put it, in a format. So that's what we did that day. And then afterwards, it just kept coming. And I decided to put it into a format to make it super clear, to teach it and help other people, because the people who were at that retreat just had such breakthroughs right on the spot, and then they continued to write after that. So that's kind of how it came up, or how it got created. And I would say, if we had to condense it, it was the writing program is a compilation of all kind of things I've learned over the years, and how to bring that about in the comfort of your own home on a daily basis. So, okay. Mm-hmm. So now the title. So once I have this program, and it's 4 steps, and it's simple. I wouldn't say that it's necessarily easy, but it's simple, but there's 4 steps. Once I created it, and I realized I was going to put it together in an online platform and market it, I'm looking for a name, and I have always really loved the beach. It is my happy place. And so the Nautilus Way, my logo is a nautilus. It's called a chambered nautilus shell. And if you look it up, it really is a representation of the spiral of growth and expansion that we go through as humans. And
Cool.
so I decided, I decided I really wanted to use that as a focal point because all of my journaling, all of my therapy, all of everything I've done is also just a spiral of growth and expansion and, becoming my best self. So naturally, when I put this writing program together, it was something that I wanted, and so the title, The Nautilus Way, is the way of, in my opinion, the way to your best life is through this spiral of growth and expansion, and just becoming and becoming and clearing things out and becoming, and that kind of thing. So that's where that came from.
That's really cool, and that's such a like magical entrepreneurial moment when you just have this idea and you're not really sure. And I love these stories when you're not really totally sure of how it's going to go, so you kind of quote unquote like beta it, and just like I'm not really sure what this is yet. But then as soon as you take it out for a test run, you realize like, oh, this is what it is, and then you form it. And I just love entrepreneurial stories like that because they're so magical because they're obviously just like meant to be. They're meant to be birthed.
That is what it feels like. And I will tell you that so this writing program came about during my writing of my novel. And I don't know if you remember, but you may, but through you and I working together with you coaching me through this writing the novel, I initially wanted to incorporate journal entries into my novel, right? And so then as I progress, I'm still writing the novel. I'm writing journal entries into the novel and realize that, that there's a process to this journaling. Like I didn't realize it as I'm journaling every day, but as I was trying to put the journals in the novel and also teach them in these retreats, it was like, oh, wow, like it just came together. The two things just kind of collided. And then I was like, wow, I will be able to, I didn't do much of the exampling of what my writing program is in the journaling in the book, but yes, it's just kind of miraculous, just kind of came together, but it was in the writing of my novel that also pulled it all together and caused me to want to help people understand the value of it, of writing.
Yeah, and there's such a great lesson there because I know there's so many, like with nonfiction writers, people that are writing business books and things like, and self-help books and things like that, the path to creating some sort of product or, program or course or just anything entrepreneurial is very clear usually with nonfiction books. But I've heard a lot of novelists struggle with like, well, how do I turn, a novel into a business idea, a business program or product? And you just did it so beautifully here. So hopefully this is kind of inspiration and maybe ideas for those of you listening who are writing a novel saying like, yeah, I have a little bit of the, entrepreneurial spirit. I just have no idea what the pathway is from, a novel to a business product. Well, kind of like open up your mind and look at your novel and use your imagination and don't just, the one thing not to do is don't just look at your novel. Well, it's a novel. It's not a business idea. So I don't know how I could possibly like monetize my novel because it's a novel. Not necessarily true. And Marie really has just proven that. So that's great. And of course, speaking of your novel, you need to tell us all about it, even when she rose. In your words, it is. So you said it's heavily inspired by your experiences. So share with us how the novel came about and how you decided to write a novel versus maybe another format of book to share your story.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm gonna piggyback just a little off of your previous comments. To be clear, when I wrote the novel, and I'm going to get into that, when I wrote the novel, I had no desire to monetize it or create anything or,
like it was magic.
Teach it.
It just came around.
Right.
Yeah.
It wasn't like I went into it and thought that at all. It truly just evolved out of it. But so here's what happened with me writing this, which really cool is when I was all the way back to when I was a teenager, I believe I was 13, 14, 15-ish, I started writing a fiction novel about my life. So with other character names and that kind of stuff. And I believe, I'm a big fan of Elizabeth Gilbert, and she talks about the universe just giving us these ideas and these driving us to whatever art or craft or whatever. And so for me, what that translates to all the way back then when I was 14, or 15 or however old I was, I had this desire to write a fiction about my life. I didn't know it would take me 35 years to actually do it. And I wish I had those papers, because I've written probably a whole composition notebook of this story about my life back then, and for whatever reason I don't have it. But so that goes all the way back to then. And then, so I think that never really left me. I've always had an idea to write a book, but I think I thought it was kind of like all the rest of the people in the world. I was like, oh yeah, sure, you want to write a book, or that's what was going on in my mind. Like, it wasn't that big of a deal to me. But it never really left me. So I think as my life unfolded and definitely got more stable as I was in, say, my mid to late 30s, it kept coming back and coming back. So I started, I would like write a little something here or there and think, oh, this must be it, but I never could put my thumb on it, and I had a reason to some very personal reasons why I was loath to start this novel, and I knew I wanted to write it about my life. But my mother, who was really a loving, caring human, the things that I was going to say, I was afraid that it might hurt her. And so it kind of held me off. And so then eventually, I said, okay, it's time. And so that was about 4.5 years ago. And that's where this is how the novel came, because it was just coming for all those years. And then finally I was like, you got to write this novel. So I started, I think I chose to write it as a fiction. It's funny, my first interview with you, Christine, or the first consultation with you, I remember saying I knew instinctively that I didn't want to just write an autobiography, that I wanted to write a fiction novel. I'm not sure why. I think it just was there. There were some personal pieces that, because of my, some of the people in my life, that I would be writing about, I wanted to make sure and keep their anonymity in place, and maybe have the reader questioning, how much of the story is real and not. And so there couldn't be any, backlash, but then also keep it as authentic, and be able to tell my story. So I think that's why I chose the novel form versus just an autobiography, or I guess that's what you call it, or
memoir,
a traditional self-help, right, or a memoir. I think that, that was a lot to do with it. So it is heavily inspired. I would say by and large, it's a good portion of it is accurate.
Yeah. I love stories like that, whether movies or books, where it says, and I just get very excited when I see, inspired by real life events and things like that. And it's like what you were just saying, where it's like, ooh, I wonder how much is real life and how much is made up, and it has such an allure. So I can just really tell, and I've known this for years about you, but telling the audience here, you're a person who really just trusts your instincts and your intuition and your inner creative voice. Everything from the Novelist way, how you just described how that process naturally evolved, and you just continued to trust yourself, and you didn't question yourself, well, why should I do a journaling program? You just kind of went with it. And then with this, like, you had this inner voice, this inner knowing saying, I just believe this should be a novel, and you just trusted yourself. And that's such a powerful thing for authors. So I love to pull kind of lessons out of these interviews, as my listeners know, even as the interviews are progressing. And that's such a great lesson there. It's a powerful thing about, and I think that's true for authors maybe more than non-authors and, regular people out there, is that we really trust our intuition and we trust our instincts. Well, those of us who I think have the most fun along the way anyway. So great lesson there about just, trusting your instincts, because you're a person that very much trusts your instincts, I know.
I have certainly honed that through my journaling, but also this writing process has helped me hone it. As I was turning out this novel, that's helped me a lot. I also something that's probably fairly significant to why that I just am putting together to why I wanted to write a fiction is because I think some people are pretty hardcore about not like, oh, that's a self-help book and I'm not going to read it. I have enough people in my life that they're like, they'll read a novel because it's entertaining on some level or should be. And for me in particular, even as a very, very young child, I loved fiction. I loved reading. I was often caught with a flashlight under my covers late at night reading whatever books I checked out from the library. But as a young adult, or probably more in my 20s, as I kept reading, it was my escape. It was the thing that helped me, reading helped me escape. It helped me get into another world when mine was a mess. And so but I learned a lot and grew as a person from the character development in novels a lot, through my I would say my 20s for sure. So I do believe that that was probably part of why I wanted to put it in this format. So maybe a little more inconspicuous,
Yeah. And you still did such a great job. Like you said, I mean, I think writing a self-help book would have been an option for you. But what you did so beautifully in this novel is that you took a lot of those elements and themes and messages and, lessons from the self-help aspect, you're putting self-help in quotes, the self-help aspect of your life. And you just wove them so beautifully into a fictitious story for all intents and purposes. And I thought that was such an interesting thing to do. So is that something that just kind of evolved along the way, kind of like, taking the self-help messages and also, really strong messages from your business and your journaling program and just weaving them into this fictitious story, like really seamlessly?
I gotta tell you, it happened fairly easily. I don't know. I knew there were things that I wanted to make sure came across, but in the writing of the novel and the writing of the scenes, the things that actually a lot of it had actually taken place, or maybe in hindsight looking back, I was able to weave that in to make sure that the reader would get some value out of her process, in it, in, the storytelling. I don't know. I guess I think I'm answering your question.
Yeah.
But
I mean,
it was
I
fairly
don't know
easy
is
for
a
me to
valid
do
answer.
because I live this. I live
absolutely.
and I breathe it. So so when I'm writing, naturally the life lessons and my own evolution or expansion is going to come out in even when I created these fiction characters. It's kind of cool how it happened with that. So that part came fairly easily to me. I didn't have to work on that. I had to work on my mind more than I had to work on what I wrote, if that makes any sense.
Oh, it does. I mean, look at the three pillars of this show here: writing fundamentals, productivity, and mindset. I mean, those are the three things. Those are the three things that get great books done. Knowing how to write a book, productivity habits, like butt in seat, go write the book, and then mindset, dealing with all those limiting beliefs that might, lie to you and tell you can't write a book. So that's why my three pillars are my three pillars. Because
mindset was definitely my biggest challenge. My mindset was definitely mine. But anyhow, go ahead.
Yeah. So how much do you want to share with us about, because we want everybody to be surprised by the story, so maybe just talk about the characters, or how much do you want to share with us about the story itself, the fiction story?
Well, I'll kind of give you an idea based on what you would read on the back cover. It's a main character. Her name's Rose. And she's, comes from a pretty tough childhood. She's in her late 30s. She's a mom of two teenagers, one who's in college, first year of college, one who's in boarding school, maybe second year of college, I can't remember. And she's remarried after a really long first marriage, but really hard first marriage. She's remarried to a really great guy, and she is in the novel. She's a high school teacher, and she's just trying to keep up with everything, with life. She just got 40 plates spinning, and she's just trying to keep up and keep her kids happy and make it, and she really thinks that she's put her past behind her. And so she's just plugging away, and she decides to take on a tutoring job with a young pregnant mom who's a high school senior, and whose parents are actually having her drop out of school and all the things. So she takes on this job, and it kind of cracks open the things that she hadn't fully resolved and dealt with from her past. And so Rose's story is told through that process, through the novel. It's kind of interwoven. So I think that gives the reader a pretty good base of what to expect. And so that's it.
And there's so many relatable themes in there. So I think it's just so many people are going to be, even if they're not specifically like totally connecting with either of the main characters, the teenage mom or Rose herself, it's such a relatable thing, like not dealing with our past, and then it comes back, because that's the thing about life, anything you haven't, resolved. I think that's the saying, anything you haven't dealt with, it's just going to keep coming back until you deal with it. So that's just what strikes me about your story. There's just so many universal truths and themes and lessons just woven into this, very interesting, very entertaining story.
Well, I am finally feeling like it is both interesting and entertaining. It has taken me a long time.
There's mindset.
Yes, yep. I would imagine most first-time authors are like, who's going to read this story, and is it even good? And I'm finally getting a little excited, probably because some people have read it and said, oh my gosh, I couldn't wait for the next chapter. And so, anyhow, that just made me think of that. But yes, I think it is, in the work I do, both with health coaching and personal development retreats and stuff, a common theme is if we're surviving, we believe we're at our potential. And often there are numerous things, and sometimes they're not like all the deep dark stuff. Sometimes they're just like little, my newest thing is talking about like these little hooks that we don't even know are there, and we can shift. If we could shift a couple of them, it shifts everything. So I'm pretty passionate about getting that message out because I've seen it so many times in my own life, and anyhow, I could go on and on about that.
Oh yeah, it's fine. And you mentioned like the mindset of a first-time novelist. So speaking to those first-time novelists, and even just first-time authors in general, but especially first-time novelists, what kind of advice would you give to them? People that are maybe thinking about writing a novel, or maybe they've already started writing a novel. What advice would you give them?
Wow. Just get started would be one. Like, just do the thing. And maybe trust that the universe or God, wherever this is coming from, whatever you believe that your desire to write a novel is coming from, that there's a reason, and it's probably far beyond even your ability to know why. Like, who's it going to touch? Who's it going to impact? And to just really, you talked about trusting that earlier, and I really believe that when we get these urges or desires to bring forth a creative work, that the universe is going to join with you to bring it, to make it come to life, and for it to be a good piece of art. I think often people don't realize that writing is just as much a piece of art as a painting. It's just a very different medium. So that probably is the biggest thing. And then I would say a couple of other things, like believe them, meaning whoever you're working with as a coach, or the writers who've come before you who are sharing their experience. Believe them when they say that the first draft is going to be
I think
terrible.
Ernest Hemingway had an expletive for it. Yeah.
Yeah. I was trying to keep my expletives out of there. It's the first draft is supposed. Let's go with the first draft is actually supposed to be bad. Not bad as in you're a bad writer, but bad as in you got to just get the ideas out. And Christine, I remember you telling me that, but my first time novelist brain was saying, well, I don't want to edit it that much, so I need to write it and edit it kind of in one swoop, because I wanted to skip all the side stuff. And it really held me back. I can tell you I had to do a lot of extra work on the first 3 chapters, because I had gone into those first 3 chapters with that in mind. And so they weren't, my creative juices weren't flowing. My actual writing ability wasn't coming through, because I was trying to do 4 steps at one time. So, and I do believe that your first draft, I know now, your first draft being terrible has no bearing on the end product. Like none.
Love
Zero
that.
on the end product.
I love that you said that. And I love that you said, I mean, I just call it word vomit. And I love what you said about those early chapters, because this literally happens with every single one of my book coaching clients, is when we get to the self-editing stages. And they're just like, the first half of my book is a nightmare. Why is the second half of my book so much better? It's like, well, you were a much better author when you wrote the first draft of the second half of your book. Of course it's better.
Right.
Funny how time and practice and repetition works.
And what's really hard is I'm saying this, and you told me, but I think the key component though is confidence. And so maybe something else that I would say is just work on your confidence as a writer. Like, if you aren't trying to write a novel, are you just a good writer? Can you put words together? You know, do you enjoy putting words together? You know, did you have, you know, when you're back in school, did you get whatever? Like, just pull up and marinate in your confidence as your ability as a writer. Or go create it, because that, for me, when I started connecting with that, it was like, oh, I know how to do this. Oh, if I stop worrying about using the same word 14 times, I can just get this out and the story will flow, right? And so when I quit trying to be a good writer, I just started writing, and it got easy. And then once it got easy, the editing wasn't fun, but it was way better. The work, the product was way better when I stopped trying to be a good writer, and I just wrote, and I just got the story out of my body.
That is an amazing lesson. I hope everybody heard that. As soon as you quit trying to be a good writer, that's when you became a good writer, and that's probably when you started really having fun as a writer.
Well, I think that's the point when the story that was already in me, right? Mm-hmm. The thing that was already begging to be birthed, for lack of a better term. It was able to come out when I was not trying to intercept it and make it pretty and make it perfect and make myself be a good writer. It was like opening a floodgate to the I want to say talent, but to the flow from the universe to the story that was asking to be written could come out, because if not, it was almost like it had to get filtered and filtered and filtered, and then it was like, well, that wasn't what I was meant to write, which is like this, perfect go off to the mountains and come out with a clean first draft, which I understand now is not even close to true.
I love
totally.
that. I mean, it's like it's like you got out of your own way, and you stopped filtering what was meant to come out through limiting beliefs about what was meant to come out.
Right. Yeah. And that happened. It took a while. And as you know, when I wrote my novel, I was under some extreme emotional duress. So I had to, just take my time with it. But when I engaged with, this idea that this novel was meant to be here, and I let that come. Every step that I did during those times when I could get my mind in the right place, it was easy. So much so that I'm saying, oh, I think I'll write another book, which I have not felt like before. So,
Oh gosh.
yeah,
I compare them to potato chips. Everybody wants to do a second. At some point, I swear, everybody's just like, oh, okay, the second book. And people that were just like, oh, no, I'm just going to write this one book, and then and I'm just like, okay, and I smile, a little smirk. And then at some point, they're just like, okay, so for my second book, yeah, I was laughing.
Well, I reached out to you probably, what was it, like 2 years in, and I said, okay, I have this idea for the second book, which is,
I was laughing.
But which is, it's kind of funny, but I think I'm probably most surprised at how much I grew as an author, but also just like is it funny to hear me say that, because I kept saying I don't feel like an author. I don't feel like an author. But I grew
hear all
so
the time.
much.
Yeah,
I know. And I have to thank you for that, because you just never quit believing that, which was really kind of cool, even though I was like, this lady does not know me.
Two coaches. That was the most fun of our relationship is coach versus coach. We had some funny moments, and I enjoyed that.
Yeah, I'm probably not the easiest person to coach.
Yeah, you are.
But yeah, the process, I think I just grew so much through it. I'm really grateful for that piece alone, just what it did for my confidence as a person, not necessarily just as a writer, but
you grew as a writer too. I remember. Well, this is awesome.
Yeah.
If everybody's not excited about reading Marie's book at this point, even when she rose, I don't know. I don't know what else to tell you, because there's just all of Marie's spirit and this whole experience that she's talking about, and all the lessons about journaling that carry over into the novel. It's all in there. So you just definitely want that. And speaking of that, how are people going to be able to know when your book comes out? Where can people connect with you and stay in touch with you?
I would, I'm working on that. I'm trying to not be hard on myself, because I feel like I should have something more further along the line. But at this point, I would say the easiest thing, and I don't know what goes out on your podcast, if there's any tags or
I'll put your links, in the show notes, but you can tell people now too.
The easiest part would be to find me on Facebook, because I update a lot there. Also, if you're going to post about my website, we will be adding a tab, on there with the novel information and, ordering link once we get it, because it's coming out here within probably the next 2 or 3 weeks. And so, the easiest place that would be Facebook, just because I'm on it so much and, posting about the development of the book and what's next. So, but then my website will also, which is just mariecruz.com. Nothing spectacular.
And spelling Marie's name, just so everybody knows, Marie, Marie, Cruz, like crew of a rowboat, not a rowboat, I guess a bigger boat than that, Crews. And then if, and you can connect with her, like she said, Facebook, and Marie Cruz, Crews.com. But also Marie is very active in my Inc. Authors group, as many of you are.
Oh, yes.
So when in doubt, if you can't find her in any of the other places, just come on over to Inc. Authors. That link is always in my show notes, and tag Marie Cruz, Crews. And let's start a conversation. And thank you so much for being on the show today, Marie. This has been just so many lessons and takeaways and inspiration today.
Awesome. Well, Christine, I can't thank you enough for the work that you do. I'm serious. Like, if you really helped me birth this book in so many ways, starting with the initial 2-hour interview that we did, and blueprint, and just all of it, every step of the way. So I can't thank you enough for you trusting your instincts and becoming the book coach that you are. So it has definitely made a huge difference in this process for me. And so thank you so much.
Oh, and my pleasure. And I appreciate that a lot. And I appreciate all of you listening. Thank you all for joining me here on Your Daily Writing Habit, where I am helping you all write and finish writing an awesome book. Like I said, drop by my Inc. Authors group on Facebook to connect with other authors like yourself. Until tomorrow, happy writing.